Grace and peace to you. Welcome to Morning Watch. I'm Rob, one of the pastors here at White Plains. Glad to have you with us today on a Friday. Some of us are back to work today. So if you do have to go out, I hope you're careful and safe. Maybe enjoyed the last couple of days being snowed in. Hopefully didn't lose power and all that. Morning, Robin. And good morning to everyone else whenever you're joining us. Thanks for being here. This is where we gather for a song and a thought for the day, so glad you're with us. Let's go to God in prayer to begin our time. Open unto me light for my darkness. Open unto me courage for my fear. Open unto me hope for my despair. Open unto me peace for my turmoil, and open unto me joy for my sorrow. Open unto me strength for my weakness. Open unto me wisdom for my confusion. Open unto me forgiveness for my sins. Open unto me love for my hates. Open unto me thyself for myself. Lord, Lord, open unto me. Amen. So, we continue to talk about mysticism and Howard Thurman being an ordinary mystic in the not an ordinary person, mind you. But that is how Dr. Loretta Coleman Brown describes him in her book, because he's not sequestered away in a monastery or isolated from daily life. In fact, he is influential and active in his community and in the world. And good morning, Steve. Good morning, Keith. And so there's been over the years resistance to this idea of mysticism in Christian doctrine and practice. But as you'll hear in today's song, if you have any doubt, just look at the book of Ecclesiastes and the philosophy and pattern of life that's talked about there. I mean, it's all right there. And I don't have a lot of patience for folks who want to take the mystery out of faith. So here we go. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. It's a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to love, a time to hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time that you may embrace, a time to refrain a time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, time of love, a time of hate, a time of peace. I swear it's not too late. To everything there is a season. You know, I don't have real large hands, but this is one of those few times where I do wrap my thumb around to catch the low G. You'll see people with you know, who have the kind of large hands use their thumbs a lot for different grips. You know, they'll if where they need to carry a note in the bass, right, and then maybe a, you know, something weird like this, but instead of reaching that all the way across, they'll use their thumb. Yeah, I can't do that. But playing on the baritone like this and playing a C chord this way, right? I can go to the G, that's no problem. But when you've got to do a G7 and catch this note, then really, that's the best way to do it. Because you get the yeah. There you go. It's you know, in guitar, there's no such thing as never do this or always do that. Do what works. So, I wanted to finish up a little bit of biographical details out of the first chapter of this book, From What Makes You Come Alive, of Dr. Thurman, and then read a couple of his my favorite writings of his. You know, we talked about his marriage, both of his marriages. His second marriage to Sue Thompson really was the great partnership of his life, and she was active and supported and worked with him in all his endeavors. So Thompson, when we left off, we're talking about his role at the universities right before he and Sue Bailey were married. He accepted an offer from his longtime mentor and then president of Howard University, Dr. Mordecai Wyatt Johnson, to assume a professorship and the role of dean at Rankin College at Howard University. From 1932 to 1944, Thurman's influence grew through teaching and poignant sermons, which he attributed to a certain leading of the Spirit. He would use Negro spirituals as guides. Thurman blazed a path for others to follow with his writing and speaking about nonviolence in the 1920s and 1930s. Historian Anthony Siracusa highlights Thurman's contribution. Says he began to sketch the outline of an ethical framework specifically for black liberation, and his analysis led him to the premier theme of his later work, that the very Jesus contribution he envisioned. Thurman uncovered in the Gospels clues to a nonviolent religion with a liberating spirituality. Thurman then led a pilgrimage to India and Burma and Ceylon, along with Sue Bailey Thurman and travel companions Edward and Finola Carroll. They toured this area for nearly 6 months, presenting talks and lectures, leading discussion groups, and teaching spirituals to choirs. Toward the end, they met with Mahatma Gandhi, and they discussed his notions of ahimsa, nonviolence, and satyagraha, holding firmly to truth or civil disobedience. That union of civil disobedience and speaking truth to power and principles of Christian nonviolence and love of neighbor laid the groundwork for Dr. Martin Luther King's work and many others, and a strain of activism that is still relevant and active in our world today. That spirited 3-hour conversation with Gandhi emboldened Thurman's pursuit of and his fervor for understanding Jesus and the role of civility, compassion, and reconciliation, and nonviolent direct action. Both Thurman's insights about Jesus and these Gandhian principles became central to the practice of nonviolent direct action campaigns in the North and Midwest during the 1940s and the 1950s. These early and sometimes interracial sit-ins led to the more widely known civil rights movement of the 1960s. And right before he went on this pilgrimage to India, he published an article called Good News for the Underprivileged. And that piece would serve as the basis for his classic book, Jesus and the Disinherited, in which Thurman draws a distinction between the religion of Jesus and contemporary forms of Christianity. He poignantly discusses the liberating message that Jesus had for his fellow Jews, who at the time were all minorities in a Roman-occupied territory. Thurman suggests that Jesus' universal message is for all oppressed people, for all who find themselves with their backs against the wall, as he talks about, which of course is the name of the special I recommended on PBS television about him. Not long after its publication, a young Martin Luther King Jr. read Jesus and the Disinherited in a seminary course taught by one of Howard Thurman's former seminary classmates. It is said that Dr. King was so deeply inspired by the book that he carried it with him every time he marched. And while in India at the Khyber Pass, Howard and Sue Bailey Thurman received a vision of sorts about a fellowship where all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, or religion, could worship God together. They returned home, and after a few years later, in 1944, mind you, Howard co-founded with Dr. Alfred G. Fisk the Church of Fellowship for All Peoples in San Francisco. Known as Fellowship Church, the first intentionally interracial and interdenominational church in America, included at-large members, people who resided in other regions or outside of the United States, and they supported the church financially and attended service or during visits to the San Francisco area. Today, they'd be watching it online, right? When Thurman moved from co-pastor to pastor, he introduced a time for silence into the worship service. And subsequently, he added a 20 to 30-minute meditation time before services. And he wrote meditations, especially for this time, which would come to compose one of his most popular books, Meditations of the Heart. We read from Meditations of the Heart yesterday. So, Thurman's life is fascinating, and that's just a very brief sketch of it. He continued to work and teach even after he left that church. He became the first African-American professor and dean of Marsh College at Boston University. He continued to lecture and write, and at about the same time Dr. Martin Luther King was finishing his doctoral work, he listened to several of Thurman's sermons. And on occasion, Dr. King and Coretta met socially with the Thurmans. He mentored many activists in the civil rights movement and would come to serve as its unofficial spiritual guide and advisor. Many civil rights leaders, including Bayard Rustin, James Farmer, James Lawson, Jesse Jackson, and John Lewis, regularly sought Thurman for guidance and direction. He retired in 1965. He created and directed the Howard Thurman Educational Trust and served as minister emeritus at Fellowship Church, and he died in San Francisco in 1981 at the age of 81. That Howard Thurman Educational Trust, if you look at the credit in our hymnal and in many other areas, is the organization that to this day administers the content of his work and does good work, not just promoting but licensing and ensuring the proper use of it. So I wanted to finish today with a couple of readings, short readings. This was one of the first places that I became aware of Dr. Thurman's words and message, even if it was not even if I didn't know about his life and impact at that time. 2 poems about Christmas. Christmas is Waiting to be Born, and The Work of Christmas. The second one, The Work of Christmas, was given out every year by Ed Boomhauer at our church. I had for years a little postcard that Ed had made where it had that poem on it, and he would give it in Christmas cards to friends every year. I sang with Ed in the choir. He was a wonderful man, kind, gentle, exactly the type of person you would expect to be inspired by Dr. Thurman's words and message. And that poem, The Work of Christmas, I loved for years without knowing anything of the man who wrote it. But here's the first one. Christmas is Waiting to be Born. Where refugees seek deliverance that never comes, and the heart consumes itself if it would live. Where little children age before their time, and life wears down the edges of the mind. Where the old man sits with his mind grown cold, while bones and sinew, blood and cell go slowly down to death. Where fear companions each day's life, and perfect love seems long delayed. Christmas is waiting to be born. In you, in me, in all mankind. Yeah, I can't say too much more about that. And the second one is, of course, The Work of Christmas. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among brothers, to make music in the heart. Both of those are from a little pamphlet called The Mood of Christmas. Well, there you go. May you find peace and purpose in this day, folks. May you do that work of Christmas. And if you happen to be in the setting of the former poem, may you find the feeling, the grace, the peace of Christ's work, life, death, and resurrection among us. All right, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. I'll see you again on Monday for another Morning Watch. I'll have a couple of recorded episodes at the beginning of the week next week. And back with you live on Wednesday. Thanks. Hey, Jeanette. Good morning. Good morning, Faye. Good morning, Emma. All right. Thanks for being here. Hope to see you in church on Sunday. We do have a contemporary worship service again this Sunday. This will be the last one that Bert and I are leading before our new contemporary worship leader, Kenny Ann, joins us. And we begin regular weekly services on March 16th. So look for that. But we do have one of the last of our little experiments this Sunday at 9. And then, of course, regular sanctuary worship at 11 a.m. Hope to see you at one of those or online. And I'll see you again Monday for another Morning Watch. Thanks. Take care.